Most people believe influence is something you acquire. You become more confident, more charismatic, more knowledgeable, more persuasive. You learn how to communicate, how to lead, how to inspire. You study body language. You choose your words carefully. You learn when to speak and when to remain silent. The assumption is simple. If you develop enough skill, eventually people will listen. Eventually your presence will carry weight. But almost everyone has encountered someone who quietly challenges that assumption. Perhaps it happened at work. A meeting was tense. Everyone was defending their position. People were speaking over one another. The atmosphere felt tight. Then someone entered the room. They didn't raise their voice. They didn't demand attention. They didn't announce themselves as the leader. Yet something almost impossible to explain began happening. The conversation slowed. People stopped interrupting. The urgency that had filled the room seemed to dissolve on its own. No one had been persuaded. Nothing dramatic had occurred. And yet everyone could feel that something had changed. Perhaps you've experienced this with a teacher, a friend, a parent, or someone you met only briefly but never forgot. They didn't leave an impression because they tried to influence you. They left an impression because being near them somehow made you feel more like yourself. Many of us spend years trying to create that effect. We become better communicators, better leaders, better listeners. We work on confidence, presence, authenticity. We try to become the kind of person others naturally trust. Yet, the harder we try to become influential, the more subtle the effort becomes. People may admire our words, but they rarely feel changed by them. Perhaps influence has never depended on what you say. Perhaps it has never depended on your personality at all. Perhaps the deepest influence begins only when there is nothing inside you trying to influence anyone. Most people believe communication happens through words. They assume that if they can explain themselves clearly enough, if they can find the perfect argument, the perfect presentation, the perfect response, other people will naturally understand them. But something much quieter is always happening beneath every conversation. Every human being is communicating on two levels at the same time. The first is obvious, the words you choose, the tone of your voice, your facial expressions, your actions. This is the conversation the mind notices. But beneath that is another conversation, one that almost never uses language, your nervous system, whether it is open or contracted, relaxed or defended, present or preoccupied, coherent or divided. This second conversation is always speaking, even when you remain completely silent, and surprisingly, it is usually the one people respond to most deeply. When the body is quietly protecting an identity, others feel it. When there is an unspoken need to be respected, others feel it. When approval is being sought, others feel it. When certainty is being performed to hide uncertainty, others feel it. Even when every sentence sounds intelligent, even when every answer is technically correct, something inside another person's nervous system recognizes whether what they are hearing is emerging from openness or from protection. This is why two people can say exactly the same words, yet leave completely different impressions. One creates ease, the other creates subtle tension. The difference is rarely the message. It is the state from which the message emerges. This is also why advice so often fails, not because the advice is inaccurate, not because people are unwilling to learn, but because information rarely reaches a nervous system that does not yet feel safe. When the body is organized around defense, it is not listening for wisdom. It is listening for danger. It is asking questions that the conscious mind may never even notice. Am I safe here? Can I relax? Do I need to protect myself? Can I trust this person? These questions are answered long before language has time to construct meaning. The body notices rhythm before reasoning, presence before personality, regulation before explanation. This is why children often know whether an adult is truly calm regardless of what the adult says. It is why animals instinctively sense fear even when someone smiles. It is why some people make you feel peaceful within moments of meeting them, while others leave you feeling subtly exhausted after only a few minutes. The nervous system is constantly orienting toward coherence. It naturally recognizes what is stable, what is genuine, what is not divided against itself. Without effort, it begins adjusting to whatever field it encounters. This is not something we consciously decide. It is part of how human beings have always related to one another. Perhaps this is why true leadership has never depended on controlling people. Perhaps it has never depended on becoming more persuasive. Perhaps influence has always begun much earlier, with one nervous system quietly recognizing that it is finally safe enough to stop defending itself. Once you begin to see that influence is transmitted through the nervous system as much as through words, an entirely different understanding of leadership begins to emerge. Leadership is no longer limited to people with titles. It is no longer reserved for executives, teachers, parents, coaches, or public speakers. Every human interaction becomes an act of leadership. Every conversation influences the field between two nervous systems. Every response either creates more contraction or more openness. Whether you realize it or not, you are continuously shaping the emotional environment around you. This changes everything. It changes how parents raise children, how partners move through disagreement, how managers lead teams, how teachers hold a classroom, how friends support one another. Even strangers briefly sharing the same space begin responding to one another in subtle ways that neither may consciously notice. Most people imagine leadership as something they must perform. They believe they need confidence, authority, certainty, experience, the ability to motivate, the ability to inspire. So, they spend years constructing an identity capable of carrying those expectations. They learn how to project confidence even when they feel uncertain. They try to appear calm while anxiety quietly moves beneath the surface. They carefully manage how others perceive them. They become increasingly aware of saying the right thing, doing the right thing, making the right decision. Eventually, leadership becomes exhausting, not because responsibility is difficult, but because maintaining an identity requires constant energy. Every conversation becomes another opportunity to prove yourself. Every mistake becomes a threat to the image you've been protecting. Every disagreement feels personal. Every criticism feels dangerous. The nervous system never fully relaxes because it is continuously maintaining the character called leader. Yet genuine leadership begins exactly where that performance starts to dissolve. The more coherent your inner experience becomes, the less interested you are in convincing anyone of who you are. You no longer need to appear wise. You no longer need to be the smartest person in the room. You no longer need to control how people think about you. Something much more valuable becomes available: your attention. Instead of monitoring yourself, you begin noticing others. You hear what is actually being said. You notice what is not being said. You sense hesitation before words appear. You recognize fear hiding behind certainty. You feel openness emerging beneath resistance. Because your attention is no longer occupied by protecting an identity, it becomes available for relationship. This is where precision naturally appears. Not because you have memorized better techniques, but because you are finally present enough to respond to what is actually happening. Sometimes leadership speaks clearly. Sometimes it asks a question. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it says nothing at all. The response is guided by the moment itself, rather than by the need to maintain authority. Something remarkable begins happening around people who live this way. Others often find themselves relaxing without understanding why. Conversations become less reactive. Decisions become clearer. Creativity begins appearing where confusion once existed. Conflict loses much of its emotional charge, not because anyone has been persuaded, but because stability has entered the field. Imagine placing two tuning forks beside one another. Strike one, and after a moment, the second begins vibrating at the same frequency. Neither tuning fork forces the other, neither argues, neither persuades. Resonance simply happens because vibration naturally seeks coherence. Human nervous systems behave in much the same way. We are constantly orienting toward whatever feels most stable. When someone remains open in the presence of uncertainty, our own system begins discovering that openness is possible. When someone remains grounded during conflict, our own system quietly learns that defense may no longer be necessary. Nothing is imposed. Nothing is manipulated. Nothing is controlled. The environment simply begins reorganizing itself around the greatest coherence available. This is why true influence often feels almost invisible. The person themselves may not even realize it is happening. They are not trying to lead. They are not trying to change anyone. They are simply no longer interfering with the intelligence already moving through life. Influence is no longer something they generate through effort. It becomes something life naturally expresses through a nervous system that is no longer divided against itself. Perhaps this is the deepest meaning of leadership. Not becoming someone others choose to follow, but becoming so internally coherent that others quietly remember their own capacity for coherence simply by being in your presence. If influence is not created by effort, then what actually creates it? The answer is surprisingly simple. Not a better personality, not greater confidence, not more knowledge, greater coherence. The deepest leadership asks very little from the personality. It does not require you to become more impressive, more persuasive, more inspiring. It asks something much quieter. It asks the body to stop fighting itself. For most of our lives, enormous energy is spent managing inner conflict. One part of us wants to speak. Another part fears saying the wrong thing. One part wants to lead. Another worries about being judged. One part wants to remain authentic. Another carefully edits every response to protect an image. This constant negotiation creates subtle friction inside the nervous system. That friction is felt long before it is understood. But as internal conflict begins to dissolve, something remarkable happens. Clarity no longer feels like something you create. It begins appearing on its own. You stop searching for the perfect response, and the appropriate response simply arrives. Stillness becomes visible, not because you are trying to appear calm, but because nothing inside is pulling against itself. Timing becomes effortless. There is no urgency to speak first, no pressure to fill silence, no need to prove that you understand. Sometimes the wisest response is immediate. Sometimes it comes after several moments of quiet. And because there is no internal pressure, both feel completely natural. Something else begins changing. Your words become fewer, not because you have less to say, but because less is needed. When every sentence no longer carries the burden of defending an identity, communication becomes remarkably simple. A few words often accomplish what lengthy explanations never could, not because the words themselves are extraordinary, but because they arrive without resistance, without agenda, without the subtle tension of trying to produce an effect. Nothing extra needs to be added. Nothing needs to be exaggerated. Nothing needs to be performed. Presence begins carrying what personality once tried to accomplish. People no longer respond primarily to your opinions. They respond to the absence of conflict behind them. The body recognizes when someone is no longer divided. It recognizes when speech emerges from openness rather than strategy. It recognizes when listening is genuine rather than waiting for an opportunity to respond. This is why authentic presence often feels so trustworthy. Not because the person appears perfect, but because there is no effort to appear perfect. There is simply someone fully participating in this moment without trying to become someone else. Influence slowly changes its meaning. It is no longer about expressing yourself more effectively. It becomes allowing reality to express itself through a nervous system that is no longer obstructing its movement. Life speaks more clearly because there is less interference. Action becomes cleaner because there is less self-consciousness. Relationship becomes easier because there is less to defend. You begin discovering that coherence is not something you project. It is something you stop interrupting. And perhaps this explains why the most trustworthy person in the room is so rarely the loudest. They are rarely the one demanding attention, rarely the one trying to establish authority. More often, they are simply the person with the least conflict inside, the one who no longer needs to become someone in order to fully be here. And in that quiet simplicity, others often find themselves relaxing without ever knowing why. Perhaps you were never meant to convince anyone. Perhaps life has never asked you to become more persuasive. Perhaps it has never depended on finding the perfect words, the perfect strategy, or the perfect way to be seen. For so long, it can seem as though influence belongs to those who know more, who speak more confidently, who appear more certain, yet the deeper journey quietly reveals something entirely different. The greatest influence does not come from trying to shape another person's experience. It comes from no longer resisting your own. As the need to manage impressions begins to soften, something unexpected remains. Clarity remains, not as an achievement, but as your natural state when nothing inside is arguing with this moment. Stillness remains, not because life has become quieter, but because the noise of self-protection no longer fills every space. Relationship begins to change, not because you have learned new techniques, not because you have become more impressive, but because people are no longer meeting another defended identity. They are meeting openness, a presence that does not need anything from them, a presence that is not trying to win, not trying to fix, not trying to prove, simply here. And in that openness, something inside others often begins to soften as well. Not because you have changed them, but because your presence no longer gives their own defenses anything to push against. Perhaps this is how life has always moved, not through force, not through control, but through coherence, quietly recognizing itself wherever it appears. Perhaps the deepest leadership has never belonged to extraordinary people. Perhaps it has always belonged to ordinary human beings who have become transparent enough for life to move through them without resistance. And perhaps that quiet openness, so easily overlooked, has always been the most powerful form of leadership there is.